When you're as old as we are, you remember a time before HD, before 1080p, heck, a time before every television was in color. Even though many of the shows we grew up with debuted when our parents were kids themselves, due to reruns and syndication, they're some of our favorites as well. In this episode of the show, the new Marvel series, WandaVision, gives us a chance to get monochromatic with our memories of classic television. Don't touch that dial. This is Wayback Attack.
Welcome to Wayback Attack. My name is Brian Grantham, and sitting across the table of destiny is Preston Burt. Preston, are you ready to take a trip way back?
I'm always ready to take a trip way back. That's why the show is called Wayback Attack. But you're right. This one is actually going a little further back than we normally do.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's not every day that we talk about black and white content.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So that'll give our listeners and viewers a little idea of how far back we're going. But again, inspired by something in the present that's given us this nostalgic memory. So, like at the top of the show, we mentioned I'm going to be talking about WandaVision and how those have inspired our memories of Nick at Night and classic black and white shows. But before we get into WandaVision, wanted to ask, what have you been up to lately, and have you been enjoying any other fine entertainment?
Well, I've definitely been catching up on some movies. The nice thing about Paige being in school is that she tends to take like film classes. She doesn't like movies, but it's like a good chance for her to. They count like as English classes and lit classes and stuff, and so it's a good chance for her to be able to do that so that I can watch movies. And so, we've caught up. We watched, they had her watch an episode of Twilight Zone. And so,
oh, nice.
I added all the Twilight Zone episodes to my Plex server and we watched it. And it was funny because it wasn't even really there was no twist. There was no weird thing.
Huh.
And so, it was based off of, some poem that Walt Whitman wrote.
Well, that guy.
Android thing? I don't know. Something. I don't know.
I'm not a student enough of Twilight Zone to be able to pinpoint that one, but that's weird that they went with just kind of like a random episode.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, it was specifically tied to
the
that
literature.
poem.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, but that was cool. And then
that guy was just like looking to get out of teaching some class. It was like old school, middle school. Just put on a wheel out the cart.
I remember. I would have to assume it was history, but it may have been an English class that we watched, like Schindler's List in school, and that was a crazy movie to watch in like 7th grade, probably 8th grade, maybe.
Wow.
So, but yeah, how about you? Have you been doing anything fun?
I have been doing some fun stuff, but I hope this isn't going to be a repeat for most people, but because I'm going to talk about this on the bonus episode of the podcast. Which we have for our Patreon subscribers. But you and I, we got to go to see a movie in a movie theater, and we went to see the John Carpenter 1982 classic of The Thing.
Yes, that was such a good trip.
Yeah,
such a fun thing to do.
We did that, and then also something I wanted to talk about on the bonus episode, but is we've just started, because they just started showing it on Hulu now, the television series Freaks and Geeks.
Yes.
And that's a favorite of mine, but this is really cool because my kids are now of the age where it's okay, slightly questionable for the youngest one, but it's okay to show them this kind of stuff. And it's really cool taking that trip down memory lane, not only of watching a favorite show that's now 20 years old almost, but also of those 80s memories and stuff.
Well, let me ask you a question. So when you said questionable for the youngest one, do you all usually err on the side of, well, if it's okay for the oldest one, the youngest one can watch it too, or do you usually try to pick and choose?
We do try to pick and choose. we're not naive in what the kids are exposed to out in the world at school themselves, because I was a kid myself. And also I'm like, for freaks and geeks, and especially, I'm like, well, this aired on network television, so it can't be that bad.
Right.
But, you know, a lot of times we'll just give a primer, be like, okay, there's going to be this. Let's just breeze past it, move on.
I usually go, oh, it was so tough. So when we watched Logan, me and the kids, I was like, okay, I know, you know, we talked about it on the show. I know it's violent. I usually think, okay, well, my kids are only 2 years apart in age. And so they do a lot of stuff together, right? And they experience a lot of things together. Like on the way here tonight, they were talking about stuff, and I was just thinking like, oh, how, like, me and all my siblings, like my youngest brother's 20 years younger than me, and my youngest sister is only like 7 years younger than me, but that's like my closest, the 7 years. Like it typically it's around that 7 for like my next sister, and then my oldest sister is like 20 years older than me, right? And so like you have bonds, but like 2 years is a much closer bond.
Oh yeah,
right? Because like they're like best friends. And it was funny. Like on the way home, I was like, oh, you know, they're sharing all these experiences together. Like they have all these inside jokes with each other. And so usually when I go, can they? Like I always think, can they watch it? And then I figure, well, you know, the youngest one didn't like Nightmare on Elm Street. Like she had nightmares from it, but she has her older sister there to help her out with that when that happens.
They'll have that shared memory.
Yeah, I've never, like, because they're so close in age, you know. I know when I was a kid and I would have nightmares, I always went to my parents' room, right? But that's never happened with me because they like sharing a room.
Last night we had some thunderstorms here, and my daughters both were woken up, and they both went to each other and not to us. So that was really cool that the youngest would go seek out her older sister. Yeah, but yeah. So what's cool about this show tonight is that it was able to involve my family. So we're speaking of family because with these old-timey shows, I realized that I had this collective memory that I shared with a lot of people our age. But when I showed them WandaVision, I realized, I was like, oh my gosh, I have not exposed my children to black and white television, classic, like true classic TV, other than a handful of times. And so I almost had to give them a reference point to enjoy this modern Disney Plus show of WandaVision. So I think that's what I'd like to talk about tonight. And I hope that some of you guys watching or listening have had a chance to check out WandaVision. We won't be giving away many spoilers or anything, but it did have some overlap to some stuff that we can talk about, and that's what I'm excited to do so.
You know, when you showed it to your kids, I think on Twitter you talked about how they didn't really appreciate it for what it was, right?
No, because, well, we did try to watch the, I forget what they're called, Marvel Legends or
yes.
Disney Plus put out these little short episodes to kind of give you a refresher about the characters and maybe some of their history. But even so, they were still just like, well, how does this play into anything? And so when you start to the episode of WandaVision, it's just kind of weird.
Yeah. It was funny because I was doing something down here and Paige was doing homework over there where you're sitting, and we heard the TV come on, and they were watching WandaVision by themselves. And I was like, oh, man. And she was like, oh, did you want to watch it with them? And I was like, well, I didn't really have plans to watch it with them, but I wanted to watch it. And so, like, you know, we've watched all the Marvel stuff together, so it makes sense. But so I asked them, like, when they got done with the second episode, and, you know, I was like, well, what do you think? You know, and I was like, do you like it? And they're like, yeah, we like it a lot. And I was like, okay. And then I was like, well, what's your favorite part? And they're like, oh, you know, they're gonna have babies. I was just like, okay, like, because I don't think they've ever seen a black and white TV show, like, unless it's something modern that is like doing a black and white thing, right? And so, you know, they have zero reference for that, but they seem to like it. They didn't really have any good explanation for why, but
Well, before we go any further, do we have the trailer?
Yes.
Let's dive into that to give our folks a refresher before we get even deeper.
Wanda and Vision.
We are an unusual couple, you know. We don't have an anniversary.
Huh.
Or a song. Or even wedding rings.
Well, we could remedy that. And they lived happily ever after.
Westview is our home now. I want us to fit in.
We shall. Wanda, have you gotten bigger?
Life moves pretty fast out in the suburbs.
Hiya, kids. Auntie Agnes is here, and I've got a couple of tricks up my sleeve. Let's just take it from the top.
Who are you?
I don't know. I think something's wrong here.
We just don't know what to expect.
I do want to start off with saying something.
Okay.
I have been saying for the past several episodes, I feel like it's been the past couple episodes, that this was supposed to come out after the Doctor Strange movie, but that's not the case.
Okay, this was always supposed to be
This was always supposed to come out before. I watched a thing today about it. So,
oh, that's cool.
But yeah.
All right, so if you are not into this and you're not really sure what WandaVision is, basically I'm not going to spoil much beyond what's in the trailer, but you can see it's the Scarlet Witch, played by Elizabeth. What's her last name? Olsen, one of the Olsen twins and sisters. Yeah, so Elizabeth Olsen and Vision, played by... Why did I do this to myself?
Is she an Olsen sister?
Yeah, you didn't know that?
Like Mary Kate and Ashley?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, I had no idea.
You learn something
She doesn't
new
look
every
anything
day.
like them.
Paul Bettany. There we go. All right, Vision played by Paul Bettany. So it's a show about Scarlet Witch, Wanda, and Vision. And as you can see, they're in some sort of sitcom-esque universe.
Mm-hmm.
And what you don't necessarily see, you see it in the trailer, but you don't necessarily see how it's structured, is each episode of the series is styled like a different classic television show. And what happens in the series is there are obviously some shenanigans going on. You're not quite sure what's happening. So it's almost like watching a standalone sitcom episode every show, but there's a little bit of mystery and a little bit of revelation every show. It's really intriguing. It's a really cool style. It's not something that you would expect from a typical superhero movie or show.
Yeah, it is interesting. The thing that I guess I should have looked up, or unless you know how many episodes are going to be in this season.
I have no idea.
No. So it'll be interesting to see how far they go, and like, is it going to end with like Young Sheldon or whatever? You know what I'm saying? Like, or whatever's on current sitcoms today.
Yeah.
And maybe that's where like the big change happens or something like that. But I think it's cool that part of the aesthetic, because I don't think you get it in the trailer, especially if you're not listening to it, or if you're listening to it, but the shows are in 4:3, and then when something happens outside of the show, it switches to 16:9, and it's like a gradual like thing that happens. So I think that's really cool. And there's tons of speculation about stuff like online about this stuff.
So this show isn't going to be about WandaVision, but the first 3 episodes of WandaVision have been out, and they are styled differently, like I mentioned before. And they really started me thinking about the TV shows we grew up with that were our parents' TV shows, a lot of them which were in black and white, because the first episode is styled like the Dick Van Dyke Show, right?
I saw it as like a mixture between Dick Van Dyke and I Love Lucy. I felt like there was like some of that in it.
Yeah, like a home family dynamic, like a couple show kind of thing. And then the next one is obviously a take on Bewitched.
Yep.
And then the third one that's out so far is a take off of like 70s TV, so like Brady Bunch, Partridge Family. I think, anyway. I could be wrong. Someone could school me. I'm not a huge a huge student of this stuff. But
I felt like the intro was more Partridge Family than Brady Bunch.
okay,
But I never watched Partridge Family. And, you and I were talking about this not too long ago, where I was like, man, it'd be awesome because the Partridge Family was, we talked about this before this last episode, and the Partridge Family was a musical show. And I was like, oh man, wouldn't it be awesome if they did like a musical episode, like it's the Monkees or something like that? And they didn't do it in the last one. And based off the trailer, I'm pretty sure they're probably not going to wind up doing it at all. But I think it'd be cool, man. Like, there's other shows that have like crazy things in it. Like there's that episode of Angel where Angel gets turned into a puppet. And what's that guy that did those shows, Buffy and Serenity and
Ryan? No.
It's the Guardians of the...
Oh, Joss Whedon.
Yes, Joss Whedon. So he loves musicals, and so he would do that a lot, where he would have... There was a Buffy episode where they all got taken over by a spell where they all sang the whole show and stuff like that. So it'd be neat if like they did something like that in this.
Yeah, very cool. I would be down with it. We got speculation that the next one will be Full House. I think it's going to be Family Ties first. I think we got to go more 80s, like early 80s.
I think if they did that, it would be... it would be like the Dick Van Dyke and I Love Lucy or Bewitched and I Dream of Jeannie.
Right,
like
like
it would be,
mix.
it would be like that time. Like it would be TGIF, right?
Yeah.
And so
It's pretty cool because you can, like you said, it's an amalgamation of some stuff. So like the stairs that they have going down, you're like, oh, those are the Brady Bunch stairs. But then it's not exactly laid out like a Brady Bunch house.
Right.
And anyway, it's really, really cool. But like I talked about earlier, it made me realize that I have not exposed my kids to the shows that we grew up with. And I realized, yes, I saw a lot of things on syndication, some classic TV that was shown, after school or on Sunday afternoons or something where there really wasn't else. They just stuck something in reruns. But most of my exposure came from Nick at Night.
Hello out there from TV land, a beautiful place to be. Nick at Night, better living through good TV.
If your boss...
Well, there were actually more you could play. But...
you want?
I mean, no, it's fine.
Maybe I'll sprinkle them out throughout the episode.
It was like 10-second little bumpers. Yeah, so I can't think of my original exposure to Nick at Night, but I do actually have some facts for you. And before I dive into that, I want to give a plug for a book. I try to read books regularly. This is a book. Ooh, there's a glare there. This is a book called Slimed. It is the oral history of Nickelodeon's golden age. This is the 5th anniversary hardback edition. This doesn't actually talk about Nick at Night so far. I'm only halfway through. But, this is Nickelodeon was the network that aired Nick at Night. And if you're, our age, you have a lot of nostalgia for Nickelodeon. So it's really, really cool to read the oral history of the people who lived it from the earliest years of its inception, which incidentally, Nickelodeon was first tested in Columbus, Ohio in 1977 before it went and launched in 1979. But this book, the one thing I would say it's a blessing and a curse is that there's so many people that they interview, and there's not too much segmentation. So it's not like here's Salute Your Shorts talk,
Right.
here's Pete and Pete talk. It's kind of thematic, but they have so many people that they interviewed that like I constantly am having to look back at like who are these people, because it's producers and people that are more than just the stars of the show. But I highly recommend this book. A lot of behind the scenes stuff, really cool. Check that out.
They got the colors backwards. It should have been a yellow book with green slime.
I know. I think there may have been like no, because Nickelodeon was a yellow splat, as an orange splat.
Oh, well, orange book, green slime.
Well, I think you get the gist. Anyway, back to Nick at Night. So I mentioned that Nickelodeon itself launched in 1979.
Right.
But Nick at Night didn't launch until 1985. So for those of you who don't, or just like have flashes of memory of Nick at Night, it was basically after their original programming, the primetime shows aired, then they'd get stuck with like just these leftover things. They're like, we need to fill some time. This is a 24-hour cable channel. What do we got? And they had the idea for it because they were given the opportunity to have 200 episodes of, I think it was the Donna Reed Show. So it launched 35 years ago. It ran 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. 7 days a week. And listen to this lineup. This is the first lineup of Nick at Night.
Okay.
You got the Donna Reed Show, Dennis the Menace, My Three Sons, something called Turkey Television, something called Route 66, and then they had a Nick at Night movie.
I feel like those things that we don't know what they are is probably something Canadian.
You think?
Yeah, because back then, so much stuff on Nickelodeon was Canadian stuff.
Right,
so,
yeah. You can't do that on television was Canadian. There was some other shows that I forget the name of, but yeah. And, you know, they're just looking for content, basically. So what was interesting to me is that the timeline of this stuff is pretty cool. So Nickelodeon was commercial free originally when they launched in 79 until 84. And then 85, they were like able to monetize more because of Nick at Night.
Right.
And then 86 is when they sold to Paramount and Viacom and all that stuff. And they kind of like, that was the launch point. And I'm wondering if maybe the formula of them finding Nick at Night was like the linchpin of like, all right, we got this. We're a fully fledged network. Let's go.
You don't remember when you started watching Nick at Night?
No, it was just like on.
Yeah. So I specifically remember so my dad is a retired police captain, and he used to work details at night. So he would work his day shift. At night he would work details, which are like a company hires police to do something, right? And so like security for something or something like that. And so I would stay up all night long and watch Nick at Night. And sometimes I'd fall asleep on the couch, but most of the time I'd stay up until he got home, like at 6 or 7 in the morning, because he would basically work 16-hour days, come home, go to sleep, get up, go to work, and except for on the weekends or whatever days he was off. But I would stay up all night, and he'd be like, "What are you doing?" And I'd be like, "I'm training to be a police officer." And so I would stay up all night, and I do remember tons of Donna Reed. There's some other shows that we're going to talk about later on tonight, but you know, like Car 54 Where Are You was a big one, like and so I, you know, and this happened over the course of a couple of years and of me doing this. So like I absorbed so much of these shows and like this time period that I would have never ever watched. And you know, back then TV was so like sparse and sporadic, right? Like there was, at that time of night, there was usually not anything good on. And so and you know, even back in that time point, some stations would turn off, you know, and like they would shut down for the night. And so like to have something on that was entertaining that entire time was super important for me.
Well, I'll say entertaining a little loosely, because I do remember sometimes putting on Nick at Night and falling asleep to it because it was not interesting to me at all. Dobie Gillis, My Three Sons was not interesting. Leave It to Beaver was too cheesy. And it's funny now because in prepping for the show, I showed my kids some of these episodes of the classic television. And a feeling I had, and I could be wrong in this, is that, you know, when we watched this, granted it wasn't that old, but because it was black and white, it felt so out of touch from modern times that it felt dated, right?
Yep.
But now we're so far removed from it. When you watch an episode of I Love Lucy, it feels timeless. It doesn't, I mean, yes, it's dated, but it's like watching The Wizard of Oz or something, where it's just like you can get immersed in this, and it's funny regardless of how old it is. It's just good comedy. It's good television, and it's interesting to see those different shows hit those high points across the years. But before we go any further, did you you hear that TV laugh track? We got a game, Brian. I got a game for you. All right, listeners, see if you can follow along with this. All right, I gave you the original lineup of Nick at Night, but as the years progress, the lineup changes, and it gets refreshed with new content, newer shows, and heck, a lot of we'll talk now about their current lineup in a second, but I wanted to give you a list of shows, and there are 2 that I'm listing in here that are not or have never been aired on Nick at Night.
Okay.
All right. And some of these that have been aired, I think you'll find surprising. So I'm going to list several TV shows. We can stop if you want to as we go.
Okay.
Or we could just review it after the end. Which 2 have never aired on Nick at Night? Looney Tunes, The Munsters, Mr. Ed, Saturday Night Live, Growing Pains, SCTV,
Okay.
American Gladiators, That 70s Show, Webster, and The Office.
Okay.
So that's a wide variety of shows here. We got some pretty modern ones like with The Office and That 70s Shows, some sketch comedy, some cartoons. What do you think?
So I know one of the things that my friends and I used to do to be like, hey, you want to feel old? This is on Nick at Night now. And so, like, I remember when Cosby got on Nick at Night being like, geez, how's that on Nick at Night, right? So, you know, something like The Office wouldn't actually surprise me, other than I could just see, I think NBC owns The Office. I feel like they do because it's on Peacock now. So I feel like they would be too protective of it, but I'm not going to say The Office. All right, I'm going to go with Saturday Night Live because I feel like, oh no, that's not true, because I remember watching that's how I got introduced to like Bill Murray and like that whole crew was like the only time I ever would have seen, well, this is what I seem to recall. The only time I remember, what was Belushi's thing, the samurai guy that like cut everything?
Yeah.
The only time I feel like I saw that would have been on Nick at Night. So I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that.
All right. Good call.
Okay.
Surprisingly, that one actually did air on Nick at Night. Although my memories of Saturday Night Live and my real exposure to Saturday Night Live was Comedy Central reruns that just aired constantly. All right. So you're down the right track. What else?
All right. So I'm going to for sure say, because this was going to be my other pick, but I'm sticking with this one. American Gladiators. I do not think that has ever been on Nick at Night.
Excellent. Correct. That is one of the 2 that was never aired on Nick at Night. No American Gladiators.
So that seems like, I love American Gladiators, you know, growing up, but it seems like a show that would not be, well, I don't know, because I feel like they eventually.
Well, I think there's a little bit of a pedigree to the shows they have. I mean, it's questionable, but I think there's some classic television. I don't know.
Double Dare has been on Nick at Night before. So what is American Gladiators if not adult Double Dare?
Okay.
So
okay.
All right. So the other one, I know Looney Tunes was, Munsters. I know Mr. Ed was. Gosh, at this point, I feel like Growing Pains, That 70s Show, and Webster are my 3, and I'm gonna have to say That 70s Show is the other one that was never on.
So close. Oh. You got it down to your 3. The answer was Webster.
Oh man,
was not actually on Nick at Night. Growing Pains, too classic. Yes, they got that one. Although I missed when it aired because of the time shift and being an adult and stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't remember watching it on Nick at Night, but that one did air. I was surprised to learn in this research that Looney Tunes aired at Nick at Night. I mean, I guess it makes sense.
I feel like it was early on.
I just never associated cartoons with Nick at Night.
Yeah. Well, the thing with Looney Tunes is they were made for adults, you know, and so I feel like that was fairly early on in Nick at Night's runnings, like probably towards the 89 or something like that.
All right, so you want to feel old?
Yes.
All right. So here are the shows that are currently airing on Nick at Night. I just looked today on Nickelodeon's schedule. There's some show called Mom. I don't know what that is.
I've never heard of it.
Never heard of it? It's airing?
Is it? It might be like an original show, because I know they do that sometimes.
I don't know. And then this one baffles me. Young Sheldon, which is a new show.
I feel like that's still on the air.
It's still on the air. But I mean, I guess I know that they have... it's under the CBS Viacom banner.
They're really pushing Young Sheldon.
I think they're really pushing Young Sheldon, and they're like trying to classify it because it takes back place in the past.
Oh.
So it's like of the era. But that's neither here nor there.
Oh.
All right, the meat of the matter.
The chat says Mom is still on the air too on CBS.
They're just trying to bolster those numbers. Here's the meat of the matter. These two shows are currently on Nick at Night. Full House.
Mm-hmm.
Not too surprised because
No. Mm-hmm.
that's of the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Friends.
Yeah.
Friends is on, and here's where you're really going to feel old. All right, do you remember how dated those shows we grew up watching felt
when they were on the air?
Yeah, like when we were watching Nick at Night when we were kids.
Yes,
Those Nick at Night shows, those black and white shows were like ancient.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I did a little math here. My Three Sons, which was one of the original programmings shows, aired originally in 1960. Dennis the Menace aired originally in 1959.
Okay, so 30.
Those are those are 26 and 25 years.
Okay.
Old when they aired. Friends is now 26 years old. So the kids watching Nick at Night today and seeing Friends, it's like they're watching a show as old as Dennis the Menace and My Three Sons were when we were kids.
That's crazy.
That's nuts.
I mean, but I feel like Friends is a good. I feel like Friends is a perfect show for Nick at Night because a lot of those shows on Nick at Night captured whatever time period they were very well. And I think Friends is one of those shows.
Oh, and Friends is hands down. Friends is one of the best shows ever made, and it is so rewatchable. I can't tell you how many times I've watched it. So even though it makes me feel old, I do give 2 thumbs up for Nick at Night showing Friends. But we're not talking about modern showings. We're not talking about modern TV shows. We're talking about the old stuff, what we grew up with, our favorites. Brian and I have several picks that we picked out, we earmarked as our favorite Nick at Night shows. Our favorite Nick at Night picks. Brian's going to go first. What do you got?
All right. Well, this was a show that I really liked when I was a kid. And, it introduced me to the Thinker, the Thinking Man, the Thinker, right? That's what it's called.
What? Oh, Rodan.
Yeah.
The Thinker.
Okay. So, get ready to check it out.
Nickelodeon makes the shift to Nick at Night. Make the scene with Dobie Gillis. The cat's a typical teen with a typical dad. Dig?
And if I'm going to be miserable, you're going to be miserable.
And Mrs. G is like sentimental.
I told you yesterday that I wanted you to keep Dobie out of here.
Mr. Gillis, I'm like confused. He's your son. He lives here.
It's kind of a family thing.
I gotta kill that boy. I just gotta.
That's the Dobie Gillis thing. Weeknights at 8, 7 Central on Nick at Night.
Please school me on Dobie Gillis. I don't remember the show.
Oh, really? I love this show.
I mean, I know the title. I couldn't tell you anything about it.
So Dobie Gillis is basically like that time period, Saved by the Bell. Right.
Oh, okay.
So, you have Dobie Gillis, he would break the fourth wall. Not during the show. Like he would usually start off the show, like I want to say like at a fountain or something, but somewhere the Thinker was somewhere involved in all this. And but anyways, he would like be talking about stuff like, oh, this is what's going on in my life, and da 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 da. And it's like they said in that commercial, like he was like a teen, like your classic teenage kid, and this show was about like the stuff that's going on in his life. So the crazy thing about this show is, to me, I don't remember the actual title of it because I always just called it Dobie Gillis, and I think that's because Nick at Night typically just called it Dobie Gillis. So like the actual name of the show is The Many Loves of Dobie Gillis. And so because he was, every episode, like there was like some new girl at school or whatever that he had a thing for. So
take her out to the malt shop.
So it was starring Dwayne Hickman, and it aired on CBS from September 29th 1959 to June 5th 1963. And the thing that made Dobie Gillis really cool of a show was, in the tail end of the 50s going into the beginning of the 60s, right? And there was a time shift during that, or not a time shift, but there is a shift in culture in America during that time, right? And going into the 60s, like the 60s were crazy. Like if you think of the 50s, how buttoned up that was, and like this show encapsulated that, right? And this was actually the first show that, or the first American television program that was on a major network that featured teenagers as the main characters. Before this, you had, like My Three Sons and stuff like that, where there were teenagers in it, but they were always like, it was always the family
part of
life.
the nuclear family.
Right.
Yeah.
And so this was the first one where, you had that. Dobie's best friend, he was like the comic relief, basically. He kind of looks like Shaggy. And he was like a beatnik, and like there's a really great I was looking at trailers and stuff, and there's a part where he's growing his goatee. He's like, it's like a beard, man. So like the show featured like a lot of beatnik culture and just like outsider culture and stuff, and so
Wow.
it was
that was
cool.
new and fresh at the time.
Yeah, it was awesome.
That's really
and as a kid, like the cool thing about that show was like I wasn't familiar with that culture at all. Like I was like 10 when I was watching this show, and so I think it was a cool way to like see that kind of stuff, and it was teenage life was close enough to 10, like I related with it, and that kind of thing. So yeah, man, Dobie Gillis was awesome.
Did it end with him like going to Vietnam or something awful?
Oh, I don't know. I feel like
the realism's too much.
I guess there were probably shows during that time period that had bummer endings like that, but I really feel like those kind of endings didn't start happening until the 80s.
Yeah.
Like early 90s, like Dinosaurs, the last episode, the meteor hits and everyone dies.
Yeah,
and
when those kids who grew up during Dobie Gillis' time and went to Vietnam were like, screw it, let's deal with some reality here. That's cool. I'll have to check that out. Is it airing anywhere? Do you know?
Oh, I don't know. I bet you can just watch it all on YouTube. I bet. Like all those shows.
That's one that, so many of these legacy shows are super iconic, but I feel like that one is not really, like, you picked one that's kind of random. I mean, that one's not in the pantheon of, like, if you're going to list the top 20 classic television shows, I don't know that Dobie Gillis is going to be, like, in someone's immediate thought. So that was kind of a deep cut. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's also interesting because the show was I don't know. Never mind. It's something different. Like, it's funny because Dobie Gillis, I feel like in the trailer he had brown hair. But I feel like there's parts where he has blonde hair in the show and brown hair and that kind of thing. So I don't know if he was dyeing his hair. I should go back and watch the show.
You should
like,
go watch.
the only thing I remember about it is from being a kid and loving it.
Well, I'm going to go check back and see how much it relates to Zach Morris now. I'm really intrigued to see if this has some carryover to Saved by the Bell, like you said.
Oh, it has, like I mean, it is basically the same thing. Like, sure, Zach Morris was much younger. Like, you saw there a lot, like those kids, you saw them grow up on TV.
Yeah.
Whereas this was only on the air for like 5 years, but it's a cool thing to see.
Well, for as deep a cut as yours is, mine is the most obvious pick there is. So credit where credit is due, other than general feelings and some commentary about I Love Lucy. Everything I'm going to talk to you about right now, I learned from a podcast that I just happened to listen to this week. It's a Planet Money podcast, and it's about how Desi Arnaz invented television as we know it.
Huh.
And it all originated from I Love Lucy. So I Love Lucy, for a little history from you guys, it aired in 1951, so it is a really, really old television show. I mentioned earlier one of the other debut Nick at Night shows, 59 was when Dennis the Menace aired. So this is years before that, almost a decade before that. It ran 6 seasons until 1957 for a total of 180 episodes. Now, Desi Arnaz is responsible for TV as we know it because before I Love Lucy, none of these things existed. A 3-camera sitcom setup, a live audience, reruns to fill time. Especially, this was the case they needed to when Lucy was actually pregnant and she delivered a child. They had to fill some time in. And then recognizing that the show itself is valuable, beyond just the single airing. So with the reruns, that was one time, but then able to keep the film and run it into syndication and be able to sell that to other channels and other networks for them to run whenever they wanted to. So it's they're saying that Desi Arnaz was basically the first mogul.
Wow. I feel like that show also, like on top of all that stuff, was groundbreaking in terms of like the comedy and stuff that was on it. Like there's a reason that I Love Lucy is as iconic as it is, like that so many people love that show.
Oh my gosh. Watching one of the episodes now, it's other than some gender stereotypes, it still really holds up. The comedy holds up. The dynamic between the two really holds up. How expressive Lucille Ball is. She's no wonder she was a huge star, because she was just so amazing. But groundbreaking television. He was a Cuban immigrant with an accent, and they made that work. And you didn't. I mean, seeing immigrants on TV, you didn't see that other than racist stereotypes.
Yeah, and Ground Apple says that it was also the first show with a married couple sharing a bed. I will say that they had the right idea. Not Lucy and Desi, but back in the day, people having different beds. My grandfather had 2 beds in his bedroom, and then my grandmother had one big queen bed, right? And man, I couldn't imagine how great life was back then to be able to have your own bed. Like his were just like twins or whatever. But like, oh man, that's why I have a king size bed now, because when I'm laying in bed and I have 2 dogs and so me, Paige, I mean, they're small dogs, like a Chihuahua and a Rat Terrier, right? But I just feel like everyone's all over me, and like I don't want to move because I'm going to wake somebody up, and like, man, I couldn't imagine just having my own bed. That's amazing.
Yeah, I don't remember them being the first, but that's pretty cool. But I do remember a lot of the old shows having the 2 separate beds. It's so weird. So back to some facts about I Love Lucy. The episode where Lucy goes to the hospital, it was pretty interesting. She was really pregnant, which was them showing someone really pregnant on TV and talking about it was revolutionary at the time. And they weren't even allowed to say pregnant. They had to say expecting. But that episode where she delivered and had the baby was the highest rated episode ever broadcast on TV at the time. 71% of Americans with a television set were watching that.
That is crazy. I couldn't imagine. I mean, like, not even the Super Bowl pulls in numbers like that, you know? Because it wasn't just 71, it was 71.7, so basically 72% of households. But also, you have to think, how many households had TVs at the time?
Yeah. Still, I mean...
And there was like 2 channels.
That's probably why it was 70%. There's only so much entertainment out there. But it was really cool. This is available currently on Hulu. You can check that out. That's where I watched it. One of the most iconic episodes, season 2, I think, they go to get jobs.
Oh yeah,
and that's the one where
the
Lucy
chocolate.
And Ethel, they have the chocolates and stuff. It's still so good.
I like the episode with the Vita Vegemite whatever. But outside of that, I hate I Love Lucy.
Really?
I do. I don't know what it is. I've never liked it.
It always creeped me out. I will say it always creeped me out with how old Fred was. That guy was ancient.
Yeah, and Ethel was his wife's name, right?
Yeah,
and she was.
I looked it up. That dude was born in the 1880s.
Wow, that's crazy.
That's how old. And then there's a 20-year difference between him and Vivian Vance, who played Ethel, his wife. So that guy, I think, was like 70 years old on I Love Lucy, and Ethel was 50. But I was like, this guy's ancient.
That's hilarious.
So,
well, a lot of couples 20 years apart, that's not that uncommon. I guess back then it probably was even less uncommon.
I guess.
I don't know. Well, I know I said I hate hated I Love Lucy. But this next show is something that you and I both chose for this. And so there's a lot of love for this show in this room.
Dick York, Dick Sargent. There's no love lost between these two.
I'll get rid of him so fast it'll make his head spin.
That's crazy. Tune in when they settle the score once and for all as Nick at Night presents Dueling Darrens, a week-long marathon that brings the color episodes of Bewitched to Nick at Night and gives you the chance to call in toll-free and vote for your favorite Darren. Don't miss it. All next week starting at 8:30, 7:30 Central, only on Nick at Night.
How'd you like a bust in the bazoo?
Hey, have you flipped? What's gotten into you?
That was a great promo, dude.
I chose that promo because I remember it, but then also, man, what a great time! All the 900 numbers to call and like vote for things.
I'm only sad that you didn't intro this segment by saying, "Let's push the beds together and share the love for Bewitched."
Yeah, it's funny though because they made a point to point that out in WandaVision. So since we were talking about WandaVision earlier, the second episode they start off in their own two beds and then they merge them together.
Oh,
so,
right.
All right, Bewitched.
No, the reason I want to talk about this one is because WandaVision was it had so many similarities to the Bewitched, especially the second episode.
But even in the first one, there's things to it,
right? You know, because she's a witch, and so is Samantha in the series Bewitched. So go ahead, this is your show.
Okay, so Bewitched. This is a show that aired on ABC from September 17th, 64 to March 25th, 72. Obviously you saw in the trailer how there are two different Darrens. And do you know why there's two different Darrens?
No.
I did not know this at the time, but I learned it today. And apparently Dick York his health was failing, and so they replaced him with Dick Sargent.
Do you think when the casting call went out, they required that the guy's name would be Dick?
We need another Richard. I feel like that's just a super common name for that time.
Yeah.
So, but I always thought it was strange because as a kid, you make weird associations with things, and I think I always just they're obviously different people. Like they both play that character similarly, but they are different takes on that character. But I think I always just assumed that like that was just like part of the thing, that his name was just Dick just because the other guy's name was Dick. I don't think I ever assumed that those were their real names. So, but
about that.
This show, we talked about how popular that I Love Lucy was. This show was actually it was so popular it finished its second as the second rated show in America during its debut season. So incredibly popular off the bat. I think a lot of that is just because there were so many practical effects in the show that weren't happening on TV at the time, and so it was such a fresh take. You take the happy home and then what do you add magic to the mix and what kind of wackiness ensues from that,
I have false memories. Was this show ever black and white?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because everything I found now is the color version.
Yeah. Well, that trailer was when they started showing all the colored ones on Nick at Night. So when it started off, it was black and white, and then during its run, it transitioned to color.
So Crackle is showing free episodes of Bewitched, but they're only showing season 4 and 5, and those are both in color. And then everything I looked at was commercials like that with the color imagery. I was like, I'm having false memories because I swore this show was in black and white.
No, it was totally both ways, and it was probably season 4 was probably when it went to color. So
did they change it with the new actor?
No, because they were both in color.
Okay.
Yeah, I think his last season. Oh, so maybe. I wonder. I don't think I put. I don't know. Anyways, I don't have the part where it talked about him getting sick, but I that must have been season 4, and that's just when they did the swap. And so there's probably not very many Dick York colored episodes. But it was second rated in the show during its first season, and then it stayed in the top 10 for the first 3 seasons, and then it ranked 11th place for 4 and 5, and they still syndicate this show across the world today.
Really?
That's how popular
I haven't
the
seen
show
this
is.
one in syndication, like on a TV show, in a long time. But no, it is a classic. It's an all-time. I think it's all-time top 10 as far as classic TV.
Yes. Yeah. And, not, in the 90s, a lot of stuff was getting like the movie reboot treatment where they were taking old TV shows and making movie remakes of them. And have you ever seen the movie for this?
I had forgotten that it existed until you just said that.
Oh, really? Because you had Will Ferrell as
oh my gosh, Will Ferrell was in that?
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And then
wow.
Nicole Kidman was Samantha.
Oh my gosh,
so,
I gotta watch that.
And not only that, but so today, either today or yesterday, Funko announced Bewitched Pops.
I saw that. Yes. I was like, oh my gosh. And they looked really cute.
Yeah. I was like, oh man,
I'm not a Funko guy. But...
I don't want to buy Pops, but that's Samantha, man. Like when I was a kid, I had the biggest crush on Samantha, and I was like, man, one day I hope I marry a witch. Man. So, but yeah, I'm glad that you like this show too.
Yeah, it's a winner, and like I said, you can watch at least the last two seasons on Crackle. So check that out.
Mm-hmm. Were you a big fan of I Dream of Jeannie?
It was okay.
Yeah, Bewitched was so much better.
Oh yeah,
like obviously I Dream of Jeannie, they were just trying to take the ball and run with it because of how popular the show was. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a fine show. I thought it was cool that the guy was an astronaut or whatever.
Yeah,
but
that's very 60s. I love that.
Yeah, I think it's funny too because this show, something that people talked about was something where they were saying a lot of these shows you don't really see what work was like. It's more the show is about the family and about the home, mm-hmm. right? And one of the cool things I thought about this was that Darren was an ad guy, and a lot of the show took place at work. Like Darren would be at work, and Larry Tate, right? That's his boss's name, right?
Yes, that sounds familiar.
He would like be like, oh, Darren, we need to do this, and he'd have a chart next to his desk and stuff like that. And so I thought it was cool to be like, oh, that's what jobs are like, stuff like that. So, I give them a lot of credit for being able to add that aspect to the show. So,
all right. Well, speaking of witches, let's go with something a little bit darker.
All right.
Wait.
Oh, my bad.
That's not the right thing. Oh, there we go. The Munsters, if you didn't recognize listening to that theme song. That was The Munsters, and of course, Rob Zombie's Dragula before that, inspired by The Munsters. So this one is an all-time classic for me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm only sharing this with you because you're my friend, but
mm-hmm.
between the Addams Family and The Munsters, I'm Team Munsters.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Okay, all right. I didn't know if we'd have to duke it out, so I'm glad you're on my side with this. The Munsters, it ran from 1964 to 1966. Only 2 seasons, if you can believe that. 70 episodes. I was shocked to learn that this was originally planned to be filmed in color. But they decided to, one, save money, about $10,000 in that period's money,
mm-hmm.
to not shoot in color. And also to help bridge that aesthetic that people were already familiar with from Universal Monsters.
Yeah. So
I think it's a smart choice,
mm-hmm.
although it may have been a little weird at the time when everything was in color and this one wasn't.
Yeah. I also think, obviously, this show is inspired by the Addams Family, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think...
Wait, no. Addams Family came a 1 week later.
Okay. Well... Someone espionage.
Yeah, that was super spy stuff.
But I've always felt like, man, that's so crazy that they were like that, because to me, Addams Family was always so serious, whereas the Munsters was fun, mm-hmm. and so that's why I always liked the Munsters.
This
more.
was like this generation's Armageddon and Deep Impact.
Oh, so what are you? You like Armageddon or Deep Impact?
I'm an Armageddon guy.
Really? So when Deep Impact and when those movies first came out, it was Deep Impact all day. And then, but as I got older, I started to appreciate Armageddon more.
I liked them both. I liked Elijah Wood, so I liked them both, but I would have to go Armageddon. And if we're comparing, the similar thing here, Addams Family, I loved it. It's good. I love the 90s movie. I think the 90s movie is genius. Yes. Everything they've tried to replicate with Monsters is horrible. 1313 Mockingbird Lane. Mockingbird Lane. Any of the reboots, they're all horrible.
Did you watch the reboot?
Yes.
I guess it was on Fox.
Brad Garrett was the star.
They were all in it at some restaurant, I remember.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Not good. So Addams Family hasn't been on the reboots, but as far as the original show goes, Monsters ruled. I learned some interesting facts and research today I'll share with you that we talk about age differences and things with Fred and Ethel. Grandpa Al, played by Al Lewis, was only, I think he was a year younger than Yvonne DiCarlo was, who played Lily.
That's crazy.
His daughter.
That's funny. I got a trivia fact about him for you.
Okay.
I think he talked about it on Howard Stern show or something like that. But the bar he hung out at, Charles Manson played guitar there.
Oh yeah.
Before all that stuff, and he Charles Manson was the babysitter for his kids because he just knew him from the bar, and so he would be like, "Yeah, come on over and watch the kids."
Oh my gosh. I remember Al Lewis owned like some restaurant that I went to in New York City.
Oh really?
In the 80s or 90s. I forget when it folded, but yeah, he had like an Italian restaurant.
Huh.
And it was like Grandpa Al's or something like that. Anyway, so I love this one because of the monster aesthetic. Like you said, it was goofy and silly. This one still holds up today. A lot of the episodes are just outlandish, and I love that it was, I guess it was kind of the same vibe as Addams Family, in that it was these creatures in modern, like it was the fish out of water story,
right? Because
it took these people and put them in the present day. And so I really, really like fish out of water stories. I love that stuff. But shout out to the Dragula.
Yeah.
That's a very famous episode. There were 2 cars, the Munster coach and the Dragula. A lot of hot rod people love that stuff. I think I watched some car restoration show on Netflix where they were building a Dragula, and they're talking about this customizer called George Barris. Like, he's a big name in the auto custom field, and he's the guy that built the Dragula and the Munster coach, which cost $20,000 to build, and the Dragula used a real coffin.
That's crazy. It took $20,000 to build that car, and they wouldn't do the color episodes because it was going to cost $10,000 to do in color. But I guess over the long term, it is also funny that that show was only on the air for 2 seasons, because didn't they replace their niece?
Yes, I read about the first. Oh, Marilyn. Marilyn. Yeah, the first Marilyn. She only did like 9 episodes, and then she went to go get married, and they replaced her. But the actress in this instance, the actresses look so similar that most people didn't even notice.
Yeah.
But they say that the only reason it went 2 seasons because they got killed in the ratings by none other than Batman.
Huh.
Batman debuted on ABC, and it just tanked them.
Yeah, it's similar comedy, and Batman is already an established character and everything like that. So I could see it.
And it was in color.
You think that's what it was?
I don't know.
Some days you just can't get rid of a bomb.
It's the future.
Well, I think that this show was always in color.
Oh, definitely.
And it was it's one that definitely holds a place in my heart, and also had an okay reboot. So buckle up, boy, and grab your shoe, because it's time to talk to the man.
Who's the very best spy in TV land?
We know who and why. Now all we have to do is find out where and when.
Get Smart, weeknights at 9, 8 Central on Nick at Night.
Well, that was a really short bumper.
I know. There was a couple of them, but I was like, well, I think this one's a short and sweet and gets right to it. So, so if you don't know what Get Smart is a show that was an American comedy series that parodied the secret agent stuff that was really popular at the time, like James Bond,
Mission Impossible.
Yeah. And so it was this bumbling idiot that had all these cool gadgets and a really like an intelligent sidekick, right?
Maxwell Smart, right?
Yes, Maxwell Smart. And I loved this show when I was a kid. It was one of my favorite shows, and I remember specifically being like, and I was probably 4th grade, and I was like talking to my mom, and I was like, do I sound just like Maxwell Smart? And she was like, no, I don't think so. And I was like, yeah, missed it by that much. And she was like, no. My mom's like, she is supportive. She is like one of the most supportive people in my life. But she was like, no, you don't sound anything like Maxwell Smart. And I was like, oh, come on, would you believe? And she was like, no, it doesn't sound anything like him. I was like, okay, fine. So and I think that subconsciously part of my love for the show was because I also loved Inspector Gadget.
Yeah.
And Don Adams played both characters, both similar types of characters, I
don't know that I made the connection that it was the same actor, but I remember watching Get Smart and liking it for almost the same reasons that I liked Inspector Gadget, because of the wacky gadgets and the good guy, bad guy stuff. And I thought it was pretty clever, and then only later did I realize that it was the same actor.
Yeah. Did you know that this was a Mel Brooks thing?
No,
I didn't know that either until doing the research. So
was this like one of his first shows?
I don't know if it was one of his first, but the program, so it was made by Mel Brooks and Buck Henry, and it came out on NBC September 18th, 1965, and it's interesting because if you look at a lot of the comedy in it makes sense that it was Mel Brooks, but the show was followed by a couple movies. There was one called The Nude Bomb. It was a 1980 theatrical film, but Brooks and Henry were not a part of that, and so they're just trying, I guess, to carry on the cachet of the show itself, and then they did a made-for-TV movie called Get Smart Again.
I don't see Mel Brooks anywhere on here.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, he's in it, baby.
Okay.
He was one of it. It was created by Mel Brooks and Buck Henry. Look that up.
Oh, you know what? Never mind.
Oh,
I clicked the wrong one.
I'm
on the 1995 one.
Yeah, so the 1995 one, that was such an interesting concept because a lot of movies I guess media in general that we grew up watching as we were kids, they are all going through the same process that TV show did. So I feel like I remembered when the Get Smart Again came out. It was 1989. Like I remembered watching that, and then the 90s show, it was Max and was it 99? Right?
It was 95.
95? Mm-hmm. No. The agent that Max and Agent 99, I think.
Sorry, I'm out of it, dude. I'm over here in IMDb land.
But the premise is they had a kid, and that's who this new show is, and it was him. Max and 99 became like the new people running the whatever the institution that they're a part of, right?
Yeah.
Because they're secret agents. So, and then of course in 2008 you had the film with The Rock, starring The Rock and the guy from The Office. The Office keeps coming up.
Steve Carell.
Steve Carell. Yeah, Steve Carell played Maxwell Smart. So, in 2010, TV Guide ranked Get Smart's opening title sequence at number 2 on its list of TV's top 10 credits as selected by readers.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was I
remember TV Guide.
Yeah. Hey, 2010. That's not that long ago. It was only 11 years ago. So, man. Get Smart, so good.
I looked it up. You were correct.
Okay.
I didn't doubt you. I was just baffled. I was like, why can I not find this anywhere? I wanted to see what. But yes, created by Mel Brooks, Buck Henry.
Yeah.
So,
and the one of my favorite things about this show were all the catchphrases and stuff. Like, Max would be in a situation, he'd be talking to some villain, bad guy, and he'd be like, come out, we've got you surrounded. And the guy would be like, no, you don't, it's just you. And he'd be like, all right, would you believe I've got 2 pitchers and a Girl Scout? He'd be like, no. And just that man had so many great catchphrases. But I think about this show all the time especially because it's talking Inspector Gadget. Some Pops came out the other day. Inspector Gadget, yeah.
Oh,
and
right.
so I was like, oh man, I feel like, Matthew Broderick ruined Inspector Gadget. Matthew Broderick kills a lot of things, like Godzilla, Inspector Gadget, and I'll leave it there. So.
Well, at least you got a little bit of options to watch. How many seasons did this run for? Do you know?
I don't know.
Enough.
I did not write that down. But let's see. If we go, it started in 65, right?
Uh-huh.
And yeah, I was going to try to do some wonky math, but the movie didn't come out till 1980, so I doubt it was on the air.
5 seasons.
There you go.
1965 to 1970. So yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot of syndication. I'm surprised we don't see that one more often, making the big bucks.
I think that comedy is that type of comedy is a very unique type of thing.
Yeah.
And so you have to have the taste
They
for it.
were big on the satire in the 60s
Mm-hmm.
with the Batman. And I remember I've told everybody this story before, but I didn't realize Batman was satire. I just thought the 60s sucked. So
hey, why would you think that watching Nick at Night? So, watching this.
If your boss is a jerk and you get home from work and you feel like a troglodyte, there's instant relief from this hardship and grief. Thank goodness for Nick at Night.
Nickate, Nite, Nickate, Nick at Night for me.
Better living through television.
Oh, I should let that one play.
Well, Nick at Night is still around, and it's contributed to a lot of memories for a lot of people, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, 30 years from now, someone will be having a show about their memories of Nick at Night, where they were watching Friends and The Office. And
Young Sheldon, Mom.
Yeah. But we certainly do appreciate all of that classic television. And I'm sure our parents did too, getting to kind of connect with their kids with the shows they grew up with.
Did you watch Nick at Night with your parents?
As here and there.
Oh,
yeah.
I watched it by myself.
Oh.
Everyone was asleep, so.
Anyway, well, we hope that you have enjoyed this episode of the show. Like I mentioned at the top of the show, we do have a bonus episode coming to our Patreon account. So if you're a patron over there, for as little as $3 and $5 a month, you can get a bonus show. And it's found at patreon.com/Wayback Attack. My name is Preston, and you can hit me up on social at Squared Stiff. Brian, where can they find you in the show?
You can find me at BE Grantham, and you can find the show on Twitter at Wayback_Attack. And if you have ideas for future episodes, you want to drop us a line, let us know, hey, I like that thing you talked about, and these are my memories. We love it when people send us emails. We read all the emails. We don't always talk about them all on the show, but maybe we can start doing some email shows or something like that.
And I like the ones where people email us and tell Brian that he's wrong.
Yeah, and I like the ones where people say, hey, I saw your website, and you can make a lot of money if you hire me to make your website for you. So, please reach out to us. Let us know what you like and what you don't like, and then, we'll
be back
in
2 weeks. So check us out next in 2 weeks on Tuesday at Twitch at 10. See you later.